We've all been in love with someone at some point. Sometimes it's mutual, sometimes it's not, and that's okay. But how far are you willing to go to make the object of your affection notice you? Would you resort to crime, kidnapping, murder? This is an incredible story of a girl who fell victim to a cunningly laid trap by a guy determined to win her affection at any cost. But was that his plan all along? 15-year-old Nicole Cable lived in Glenburn, Maine, with her mother, Kristen, stepfather, Jason Wiley, and 3 younger sisters. In 2013, Nicole was attending school, was part of the cheerleading team, worked as a model for a local clothing store, and spent her free time with her best friends. In other words, the girl's life was filled with activities. Like most modern teenagers, Nicole was also obsessed with social media and practically never let go of her phone. Every day she received friend requests. One of these new online acquaintances was Kyle Doobie. He was slightly older than the girl, but she immediately liked him. After some brief communication on Facebook, they decided to meet up. The 15-year-old schoolgirl was forbidden to meet people she had met online, but Nicole decided to meet Kyle, even if it meant lying to her mother. She was convinced that Kyle was a nice guy and asked her friend to cover for her. During their in-person meeting, Nicole liked Kyle even more, although he turned out to be slightly older than she expected. The almost 20-year-old guy didn't hide from her that he lived with his parents, who helped him raise his 4-year-old daughter because he had to work nights. Kyle worked for a company that provided care for disabled individuals, and he often had night shifts. Nicole was impressed by Kyle's dedication to fatherhood and his maturity compared to her peers. During their next meeting, the young man took her to his home, where he introduced her to his daughter. Just a week after they met, Nicole was almost ready to become his girlfriend when suddenly it turned out he already had a girlfriend. Kyle Doobie had been on and off with 16-year-old Sarah Mersinger for almost a year, known for her explosive temper and argumentative nature. Kyle's lie had deeply upset Nicole, and she needed a distraction. Fortunately, there were plenty of people on Facebook capable of taking her mind off sad thoughts, but one young man stood out among them, 18-year-old Brian Butterfield. A graduate of her school, Brian was also very handsome. Moreover, they had many mutual acquaintances, just what Nicole needed. She enthusiastically engaged in conversation with Brian, completely forgetting about Kyle. On Saturday, May 11th, Brian invited Nicole to a party and promised to pick her up around 9 p.m., but he got lost and couldn't find the turn to her house. His friends were already waiting for him, so he asked Nicole to come by herself. She couldn't ask her parents for a ride, so now that she was more interested in Brian, she decided to forgive Kyle Doobie and ask him for a ride. Kyle, of course, agreed to rectify his guilt and picked up Nicole. However, as they drove along the specified road, they couldn't find Brian's car or any signs of the party at all. Brian wasn't responding to messages. Kyle and Nicole had to turn back because meeting Brian would have to wait until next time. The next day, Sunday, May 12th, was Mother's Day. Nicole warmly congratulated her mom and tried to contact Brian to find out what happened the night before. She hoped he had a reason for not responding to her messages and was very happy when he explained that he simply had communication problems. The young people agreed to meet again. This time, Brian would come to Nicole's house, so everything should go perfectly. To ensure he wouldn't get lost, Brian asked the girl to meet him at the turn to her house. At the appointed time, Nicole warned her mother that she would step out of the house for a moment to meet her acquaintance and rushed out of the house in high spirits. On Monday morning, Nicole's mother and stepfather woke up slightly later than usual and immediately noticed that the house was too quiet, especially since Nicole should have been getting ready for school. After searching all the rooms, they realized she wasn't home. She wasn't responding to calls or messages. So they called her best friend, Hallie Robertson. She was surprised that Nicole wasn't home because she always asked her to cover for her if she needed to go somewhere or meet someone secretly from her parents. That's when the girl's mother first heard about Brian Butterfield. Hallie decided to check with Brian if he had met Nicole, but to her surprise, his account no longer existed, as if it had never existed. Upon learning this, Nicole's parents immediately contacted the police, but they decided that the girl could have gone somewhere with Brian and would soon return on her own. However, her mother knew that her daughter would never do such a thing, and especially the girl who never let go of her phone would definitely answer her parents' calls. Therefore, Nicole's relatives and friends hurried to print posters with her photos and put them up all over the city. When the schoolgirl didn't return home the next day, the police began to act. They quickly discovered that Brian's account was fake. This made them take the teenager's disappearance much more seriously. Police officers thoroughly examined the road where Nicole was supposed to meet Brian and found the girl's socks, shoes, and a ski mask that didn't belong to Nicole. May that year was quite warm, and there could have been only one reason to wear a ski mask: to conceal one's identity. And when the police found Nicole's dirty, torn sweater a few kilometers from her home, hundreds of citizens joined in the search for the teenager. While they combed the woods around the city, the police had to make sure that there was indeed no person named Brian Butterfield. To their surprise, they found out that Brian lived only 15 minutes away. He looked nothing like the guy in the photo Nicole had been talking to, but despite his lack of resemblance, many details of the boys' lives coincided. Someone who created a fake account must have known Brian. When the police asked if anyone might want to harm him, the guy said he had broken up with a girl named Sarah Mersinger who lives in Orono, Maine, with her new boyfriend, Kyle. As hope of finding Nicole alive began to fade, the police interviewed Sarah. She openly confessed to acquaintances that she hated Nicole because she was trying to seduce her boyfriend. Sarah spread rumors about the girl and threatened to deal with her rival at the first opportunity. Although she couldn't hide her anger, Sarah denied any involvement in her disappearance, claiming she spent Sunday evening with her mother. While investigators checked her alibi, specialists managed to obtain data about the IP address of the computer used to create Brian Butterfield's fake account. It was created in Kyle's parents' house, where Sarah lives. Investigators were convinced they had the culprit when it turned out that the girl had indeed spent the evening with her mother at home, and this was confirmed precisely. So, the fake account was created by someone living in the Doobie family's house, but not by Sarah. The investigation took an unexpected turn. Officers realized that Nicole was kidnapped by her friend Kyle, but they needed his confession. They invited him to the station. Detectives told Kyle that they knew he left work just before the girl's disappearance, that he logged into Brian's Facebook account immediately after logging into his own account. The last 4 digits of the phone used to block Brian Butterfield's account matched the last 4 digits of Kyle's phone. Since the guy continued to deny, the police presented their main evidence. His DNA was found on the ski mask discovered at the scene of Nicole's disappearance, and now they needed him to tell them where the girl was. Kyle refused to talk to the police, but when he was released home, he made a shocking confession to his family. On May 20th, 2013, 8 days after Nicole's disappearance, her naked body was found under leaves in the forest, 30 kilometers from her home. Nicole died from strangulation. She was killed on May 12th. Kyle Doobie was arrested and charged with kidnapping and murdering Nicole. The trial began in February 2015. Kyle claimed he had no reason to commit the crime because he and Nicole were friends, and someone else was guilty. His lawyers tried to present the case as if Kyle's ex-girlfriend Sarah committed the murder because she clearly hated Nicole and had access to Kyle's computer. However, Sarah testified that after questioning at the police station, Kyle confessed everything to her and his brother. Kyle told them that he accidentally killed the girl, panicked, and hid her body in the forest. Shocked by Kyle's confession, his brother went to the police, and that's when Nicole was found. Interestingly, Kyle also confessed to another inmate in a 15-page letter he wrote while in prison. He detailed how he decided to kidnap the girl, and when Nicole arrived at the designated location, he attacked her, tied her eyes, mouth, hands, and legs, and threw her into his father's pickup truck. But when he checked on her after some time, Nicole was dead. Evidently, the sticky tape completely prevented her from breathing, and she suffocated. Kyle explained that he panicked and dumped her lifeless body in the forest. He wrote that he didn't want it to happen. However, the evidence did not support Kyle's version that Nicole's death was accidental. Here's what really happened. When Nicole learned that Kyle was seeing Sarah, she dashed any hope he had for anything more than friendship. However, Kyle couldn't get Nicole out of his mind and devised a plan to win her over. He would kidnap Nicole and hide her in the woods. Then, when everyone was looking for her, he would miraculously find her, becoming her hero in her eyes. His vivid imagination painted pictures of how grateful Nicole would be and how she might even fall in love with him. It was a perfect plan. What could possibly go wrong? In May 2013, Kyle began executing the first part of his plan. He created a Facebook account through which he could communicate with Nicole without her realizing it was him. The cunning fellow named himself Brian Butterfield, a guy who Kyle's girlfriend had previously dated. Although Nicole didn't know him, She had heard of Brian as a popular young man who had recently graduated from the same school, and it worked. Nicole added the fake Brian as a friend, and the two started actively messaging each other. On May 11th, the day before Nicole disappeared, Kyle, pretending to be Brian, invited the girl to a non-existent party. When the fake Brian supposedly got lost, the girl was forced to contact Kyle. During that trip, Nicole and Kyle conversed quite amicably, and perhaps Kyle was ready to abandon the plan. But when he unexpectedly attempted to kiss Nicole, she resisted. Obviously, this convinced Kyle that the only way to win Nicole's sympathy was by kidnapping her. The next day, Kyle, posing as Brian, convinced Nicole to meet him at a turn near her house. Before leaving the house in the evening, Nicole told her mother that she would be briefly away to meet a friend and would soon return. It was the last time her family saw her alive. When Nicole approached the designated spot, Kyle was hiding in the bushes wearing a ski mask and holding prepared sticky tape in his hands. He intended to quickly deal with the fragile girl, but things didn't go as planned. She fiercely resisted and at one point tore off his mask and started scratching him with both hands. Now, when the girl became a threat to Kyle, he killed her. After the girl's murder, Kyle drove her far into the woods where he pulled out a knife and scraped under Nicole's nails, removing samples of his DNA. Then he hid Nicole under the leaves so that her body wouldn't be visible from the helicopter. He threw Nicole's clothes out of the window on the way back, assuming it would confuse the search dogs by masking her scent. Jurors were presented with a plethora of evidence pointing to Kyle's guilt, including a letter with his confession and DNA from under Nicole's nails, which he failed to destroy. The jury deliberated for only 45 minutes before finding him guilty of the crime. Kyle Doobie was sentenced to 60 years in prison for murder and 30 years for kidnapping, to be served concurrently. The internet helps find new friends and stay in touch with old acquaintances. However, it also has many dangerous pitfalls. The kidnapping and murder of Nicole Cable served as a reminder to parents that they often don't truly know who their children are interacting with online. But what makes this case even more frightening is that Nicole wasn't communicating with a stranger. She was talking to a guy from her school, and the person she believed was her friend was actually someone else pretending to be him.